Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Wandera interactive lab session at JNUC. My name is Lucas Kemperman, and during this interactive workshop, I'll be guiding you and touring you through the Radar admin portal that allows you to access and control Jamf data policy, Jamf threat defense, and Jamf private access. I'll be taking you through some of the basic processes and steps that every single one of our customers goes through as and when they join our company and start working with our solution. We'll be starting by setting up some of your devices and then also configuring some basic policies to apply on those devices. Then it will include things like threat defense and protecting you from any kind of threats and malware out there, as well as some of our data policy controls, such as a compliance policy that you may want to apply on your devices. And also our zero trust network access solution, Jamf Private Access, which will allow your end users to securely connect to any enterprise apps. Before we start doing all of that, I'll just give you a quick recap of what Wandera is. I'm sure that it's still relatively new for some of you. If you have any questions or you get stuck anywhere during the simulation, I'll be in the chat. I'll be able to help there, and so do feel free to reach out to me. In the chat, you'll also find a link to the simulation, which you can already load, and we'll start using that very soon. But first of all, we'll just give you that quick recap of what Wandera is and what we do. The reason we at Wandera have built the solutions that we have built is because we've seen that the traditional workplace has changed. Users are becoming more and more remote. People are working from everywhere. And in the past decade, we are seeing 4 times as many people working remotely and no longer being stuck to their desk working in the traditional way. As well as the users, we've also seen that the apps have also gone into the clouds and are being accessed and hosted from everywhere. 85%, the majority of workplaces are now moving to the clouds, and we're only seeing that trend continue. And with both the users and the apps moving into the cloud, traditional security solutions are no longer able to cope and provide secure connections. To help deal with that, Wandera has built a selection of 3 complementary solutions. Wandera has built products that are now also being rebranded as Jamf. So they're now known as Jamf Threat Defense, Jamf Data Policy, and Jamf Private Access. First of all, Jamf Threat Defense. Jamf Threat Defense is our threat defense solution that is there to provide both on-device as well as in-network protection, allowing your users to safely use the internet and use their phone for corporate purposes, ensuring that they do not install any malware on their device and protecting them from any kind of in-network threats, such as phishing attacks. This includes our award-winning zero-day phishing protection solution, powered by our Miriam threat intelligence. Secondly, there's Jamf Data Policy. Jamf Data Policy is all about content filtering and usage controls. It gives you as an admin and as a corporation data visibility and allows you to set granular policies, allowing you to ensure that your users can be productive on their devices, but also ensuring that you have your corporate acceptable use policies applied on all devices at all times, and allowing you to keep costs under control by allowing you to block costly data usage, especially when they're roaming abroad. Lastly, and our newest solution, is Jamf Private Access. Jamf Private Access is our zero trust network access solution built using a next-gen VPN solution that gives your users fast and secure connections to any of their business apps from anywhere on any device. It includes real-time risk assessments to ensure that the users are the users that they say they are, and their devices are secure before we give them access to any apps. And that's it for just a quick recap of what Wandera is and what Wandera does. So at this point, we're going to switch to the simulation. If you click on the link in the chat or browse to the link that's displayed on the screen here, you'll be able to load up your simulation. So the first thing we'll do when you sign up to Wandera, you'll receive, as an admin, you'll receive an email with your Radar password. So go ahead and find that email in your inbox and scroll down and click on the Set a Password button. This here will open up your Radar portal. Of course, here you're going to have to set a password. We recommend, of course, that you use a strong password. And for the simulation, you can enter any password that's at least 8 characters. There's also options of using two-factor authentication as well as single sign-on, which we won't be covering today during the simulation, but you can find out more about that in the documentation. Once I've set my password, I can then sign in using that password and log into the Radar portal. So once you've signed in, you'll be greeted by our Radar portal. Here you won't see much at first because we haven't got any devices enrolled yet, and that's the first thing that I'll be taking you through. So to get started, let's click on the devices and then activation section here. In here, we're going to be creating something called an activation profile. Activation profiles are the basis of any Wandera deployment, and this is where you can configure exactly what you want and how you want to use the service. So let's click here on the Create Activation Profile button. The first thing we'll want to do is simply give this activation profile a name. Now, in this case, we're going to call it JNUC 2021. We'll see here that you also have an option of selecting a device group for these users. Device groups are very useful because it allows you to not just manage your devices and organize them, but it will also allow you to apply different policies to different groups of users. In this example, though, we're just going to leave this set to default group for now and click Next. Next up is where we're going to be setting our service capabilities and traffic vectoring options. You can see the 3 solutions that we've just talked about here: threat defense, data policy, and private access. They are all complementary, and you can select any combination that you may wish to deploy to these users. In our example here, we're going to select threat defense as well as data policy. Next up, we get to traffic vectoring. You can choose here between either cloud proxy, secure DNS, or next-gen VPN, and the options available will depend on the choices you've made higher up in this service capability section. For our example here, we're actually going to deselect cloud proxy and select secure DNS instead. Now, what's the best traffic vectoring method will depend on your specific situation and your ecosystem. You can find out a lot more about the pros and cons of these in our documentation again. But for this example, we're just going to use secure DNS and click Next. Next up, we get to user identification. This user identification section allows you to configure how we should identify users that are unmanaged. Now, when it comes to managed users, users that you've got in your MDM, such as Jamf Pro, for example, we can simply get that information from the MDM, and we do not require the end user to do anything. If the user is on an unmanaged device, maybe, for example, you have some bring your own devices within your company, then we can either ask the user to supply information during the activation process, or we can use an authentication provider such as Azure or Okta or any other authentication provider, identity provider, to activate the user. In this example, I'm going to ask you to select without an identity provider and ask the user to submit their name and email addresses. And in this example, we're going to make both of those required fields. You'll see that there's also an assign random identifier option here. Some more data privacy conscious customers may want to select that. This obviously means that the users are going to be enrolled in an anonymous way. This, of course, has an effect and an impact on what you can see in the Radar portal, but is also an option that we provide. Now that we've selected these settings, we can click Next again and go to the next step. In this advanced settings option, all of the options available here are not required. They're only optional. I do want to point out the device location permissions option in particular. Now, device location is, of course, a relatively intrusive thing to check, but the important thing to note is that if you allow the app to determine the device location, all that our solution will do is track the country that the user is in. So, for example, we can tell that they're in the United States, but we can't tell that they're in Minneapolis right now. In most cases, I would set this to best effort. And one of the reasons why we may want to track the location is because many of our customers will want to apply different policies and security settings depending on the country that the user is currently in. For example, you may want to have a different data usage policy when they're in a country where using data is more expensive than in their domestic country. That's why most customers will want to enable this determine device location option. So we'll leave this all set to best effort, and we're not going to touch these other controls either, but I just wanted to touch on that. So let's click next again, and we're almost there. We're now at the last stage. This is just a screen where you can review all of the options that you selected. You can see exactly what those capabilities look like, and also what platforms are going to be supported based on your current configuration. If we're all happy with that, we can simply click Save and Create, and that's going to create our activation profile for us. Now that your activation profile has been created, you will be shown the deployment options for this activation profile. Now, first of all, the Manage Deployment option is the option that you want to use wherever possible. You can see all of the MDMs or UEMs that we support here in this list, including Jamf Pro. And if we click on this Wandera app configuration, you'll see step-by-step instructions on how to set up your Wandera solution using Jamf Pro. If you follow these step-by-step instructions and add your configuration profile to Jamf Pro, you'll be able to deploy the solution seamlessly to all your devices. As part of the simulation, we've cut out some of this, and we're not going to show you Jamf Pro, but if you click within this text, it's going to load an animation to show you exactly what would happen on the Jamf Pro side of things. Now, if you do have unmanaged users as well, then you'll want to scroll back up to this Open Enrollment section. Here you can see a shareable link as well as a QR code button. And these are useful for both initial devices that you may want to test without necessarily involving your Jamf MDM, as well as for any bring your own devices. If you click on this QR code button and click on the Download PNG option, you'll be able to just download and distribute that QR code to all your users. As soon as they scan that on their device, this will kickstart the process. They'll be able to download the app from the App Store and activate it against your activation profile. And that's it. That covers all of the deployment. Now that we've deployed our first few devices, we're going to start looking at the policy section in our portal. Let's click on Policy in the left-hand navigation. And first of all, we're going to have a look at our block policy settings. Within block policy, you're able to configure an acceptable use policy that applies to all your users. Here you'll find a large number of categories and subcategories, which include literally millions of domains. And you're able to choose which sites and apps or categories of sites and apps users can access or not access on their device. You'll see that we also allow you to select a specific traffic interface that users are allowed to or not allowed to use a specific type of websites on. Now, for our example here, we're going to go down to the gambling category. We can expand this as well and look at what the subcategories are. And in this example, we want to select the block option and not allow our users to go to any gambling options, gambling websites. Let's click Save and Apply, and this will work in real time. So as soon as you do this, as soon as you configure this policy, all your users that have the solution installed will not be able to access this website immediately because everything goes via the Jamf Security Cloud and all updates are real time. Next up, let's have a quick look at data policy. So data policy is all about data usage controls and visibility. This is where you can set a specific cap or threshold for your end users and allow them to use a certain amount of data within a specific time period. You'll see here that we have both a domestic and a roaming tab. Let's go to roaming. And what we can configure here is a specific cap or threshold that will apply to the users when they're abroad. In this example, I will set this threshold to 100 megabytes. You can do so as well in your simulation. And at the threshold, we're going to choose to cap. Now, the two options, cap and allow, are both very useful, and we have different use cases that we cover here. Some customers want to apply a hard cap and will want to choose to actually block people from visiting any websites once they've hit this threshold, whereas others may want to simply send notifications once the threshold is hit to discourage users from using any more data. The choice is up to you, but for this example, we're going to set a cap. Next up, you'll see here in this allow list that you can also allow certain websites and services to still work even once a user has hit the cap. This allows the user to stay productive while blocking any more data-hungry websites from being used, such as video streaming websites. In our simulation, let's select the bottom 4 categories here and block ActiveSync, allow ActiveSync, Find My iPhone, iMessage, and Office 365, and allow them to still work even once a cap has been hit. Now let's click Save, and that's our data policy set. Next up, we're going to have a look at our security policy. In the security policy, you'll see a large list of threats that Wandera can detect and block on customer devices. Now, you don't need to be an expert to start using this threat defense solution. You can simply use our Apply Smart Policy button available here on the top right-hand corner. And what this will do is automatically apply the recommended policies within your portal. So let's click on, in this case, on the Apply Smart Policy button in the top right. And you'll see here that this is automatically going to block the high severity threats. And it's also going to automatically alert both the users and admins when specific high severity threats occur. This is a great starting off point. You may want to tweak this later depending on how your users use it and how many alerts you get. But what I would recommend that we do in the simulation is click on the Apply Smart Policy button and just click Save. Now, the last policy section that we're going to touch on here is the access policy section. Under access policy, you can configure specific apps that you use in the business and ensure that all of the connections to that app run via Jamf Private Access, which ensures that that only authorized users on secure devices are able to connect to them. In our example, we're going to select a SaaS app. As you can see, we can add both SaaS apps in the cloud as well as enterprise apps on-prem. We're going to select to create a SaaS apps policy for this simulation. Now you'll see that we've already predefined a large number of apps here. Let's select Zoom in this example as an app to configure and to send via Jamf Private Access. Going to click Next again. On the next page, you can simply add a category and assign that to the app that you're configuring. In this example, I'm going to select Communication for Zoom. And this is simply going to allow you to do reporting depending on the app category. Then let's click Next. Next up is the hostname section. Now, all of the known domains that this app uses, in this case Zoom, are already going to be pre-configured in these apps. So the only reason why you may want to do this is if you use custom application hostnames for the app that you're configuring. In this example, we're just going to skip this. We don't use any custom hostnames, and we're just going to click Next. Next up is users and groups. Jamf Private Access also allows you to select whether or not an app should be available to everyone, to all authenticated users, or only to a selected group or department within your organization. If so, you can select the limited option, but in our example, we're simply going to allow everyone to connect to Zoom via Jamf Private Access, and then click Next again. Next up, we get to the security section. Now, this is a zero trust network access solution, and to use this zero trust capability, we will want to configure device risk-based access controls. What that means is that we will only allow a device to connect to the app that's been configured if they also meet the minimum criteria when it comes to device risk. Wandera's threat defense solution will determine the risk level for each device and will not allow devices with too high a risk level to connect. What we'll do here is set this app to deny access when device risk level is medium or higher. And we will also set it to send a user notification if that's the case, so that the user understands why they may not be able to access the app. Then let's click Next. Next up, we get to the routing section. This is where you can choose and determine how the app's traffic is being routed, whether you want to do this via the nearest data center, which is going to be useful and the most used use case for our customers, or you may choose to send the data via a specific data center. This is an option that customers may choose if they have a compliance policy that means that all their data needs to stay within a particular region, for example. It is also possible to configure the app to go via a custom IPsec if that's been configured, but that's not going to be the case here. So let's just use the nearest data center for the Zoom app here. Now let's click Next, and we get to the review section. This is where you can see everything that's been configured, and we can simply click on the Save and Create App button to finish our access policy creation. And that's it for policy setting. Now that we've deployed our users and we've also defined our policies, let's end this simulation by having a look at the reporting available within the Radar portal. I'm going to click on the dashboard first of all. On the dashboard, you'll be able to get a great snapshot and overview of everything that's going on across the estate. This top section here will show you private access related stats, including the number of requests made and the number of users that are connecting securely via Jamf Private Access. The middle section here is all about security, including the device risk, the number of threats that have been detected, as well as your current security rating. And the bottom section here is all about the data policy side of things and allows you to see the most common sites and apps that people are browsing to, as well as where data is being used around the world. You'll also see that a lot of these are interactive. For example, let's go to the top left widget here, the requests made widget. And let's change the reporting period from this month to just yesterday. And as soon as you do that, you'll see that all of those stats are updated. Next, let's actually click on the Applications button in the bottom right corner, which allows us to go to this specific report that's powering this widget and look at this in more detail. Now, we're not going to cover every single report within the Radar portal. That would be way too much for the simulation, but I'm just going to take you through a few of the most popular ones. In this applications report, you're able to see how and when people are using the private access solution. You can see here at what times of the day people are accessing apps, what apps they're accessing, and you have a number of filters here as well to look at a specific time or a specific platform. In this application breakdown view, you can see the most popular apps. And in this case, let's actually expand the third app on the list, Salesforce. By doing this, you can look at exactly when people are using Salesforce on their devices, what connections were allowed and what connections were perhaps denied if the user did not meet the security criteria that you've set up. With all of these reports, you're also able to export all of this data and use it in other tools as well. Next up, let's have a look at one of our security reports. Let's click on Security on the left-hand side and then go to Threat View. This is going to give you an overview of all of the threats that have been detected by the threat defense solution and allows you to drill down to any particular one. So in this case, for example, let's have a look at this Google Services one that shows up as a malicious app. Now, it looks like a legit sounding name, Google Services, but this has been detected as a spyware app. So let's click on that to find out a bit more, and then click on App Insights. Here we can see a number of attributes from this application and see exactly why this has been flagged as spyware. We can see the risk score assigned with this application, exactly what version number this was, as well as the SHA-256 identifier. If we scroll down, we can also look at exactly what permissions this app has requested and look at just how dangerous this is. Now, this allows us to gain more insight into exactly what's going on in our estate and take further action if required. Lastly, let's have a look at one of our data management reports. Let's click on Data Management on the left-hand side and then click on Site Snaps. Now, this is one of our most popular reports, and this report gives you a lot of visibility into what your users are doing using their company devices. Here we have an overview of the total amount of data used by your users, and as well as a sites and apps breakdown of the specific sites and apps that your users are going to. Now let's click and expand on Instagram, the top site on this account. And what you'll be able to see here is exactly what users are using this website, at what time of the day they're accessing it. And again, this gives you a lot of visibility into how your users are using your company devices. And this can then be used to perhaps further tweak some of your policy settings to allow or not allow certain sites and apps to be used at specific times or in specific areas of the world. Now, this definitely doesn't cover everything within the portal, and there is a lot more that we won't be covering in the simulation. To find out more, you can always click on the Help button, no matter where you are within the Radar portal. And that's it for this simulation. That covers some of the most popular sections of the Radar portal. Now, there's of course a lot more to look at and to do within the portal. We haven't covered everything. If you're interested in finding out more, please do contact your Jamf rep and we can set you up with a trial and you can experience this in much more detail. Thanks very much for listening and enjoy the rest of your JNUC.